Welcome back, everybody, to our FDI file on Kazakhstan. You're watching CNBC. We are at the Kazakhstan Business Forum at the banqueting house here in central London, where Kazakh leaders in business have been meeting with potential investors. We are highlighting the potential opportunities for those foreign investors in the Kazakh economy, and we're asking what strategies are the right ones when you approach this economy, and which sectors in particular offer the best return for your investment dollar at this stage. Minister, if I come to you, what restrictions are you going to place on me, though, as a foreign company that comes to you and says, great, I see an opportunity, I want to be a part of what's going on in your country, but I also want to be in charge of where that money goes? Can I be a solely owned foreign enterprise operating today in Kazakhstan? Or can I at least be a 51% shareholder in that new venture?
Definitely, there are no restrictions. You can be a sole investor or you can be a controlling investor. We are in the process of WTO negotiation. So under that process, we're also taking responsibility that there will be no restrictions to the foreign ownership in our company. So from that perspective, there are no restrictions for foreign investors.
Daryl?
The reality of Kazakhstan, it is landlocked, and it is more expensive to do work in a place like Kazakhstan. So, producing for a global economy is going to be tough, because bringing things in, moving them out. If we look at the economy, we talk about GDP growth. I think next year it's going to be about 11,000. By the year 2019, it's expected to be about $30,000. I've got a great oil and gas industry going and expanding. Kazakhstan, the amount of money being spent in these areas is just tremendous. Then I add on top of that mining. When I start building the roads, they're going to be more accessible. Grain, huge amounts of grain. And something like 2/3 of the world's energy infrastructure for the year 2030 still has not been built. And if we think of Kazakhstan being somewhere between Asia and Europe, we're the roadway. So we're going to see roads, rail, pipes, lines, everything coming through this country. This is the gateway. So you look at it from a very positive perspective. These are the industries that you look at. As a country, there's industry, we look at the oil and gas, the service providers. I think there's some great opportunities in there. We need the technology. Aberdeen, for example, has some great technologies by small and medium enterprises. We need those people to come to Kazakhstan to help develop out the technology for the fields we've got in our country. That's where a lot of the opportunities are going to come from. Moving and looking at these key areas and saying, how do I link in?
I would like a little bit. We mentioned that now Kazakhstan has a huge transportation strategy in terms of connecting China to the rest of the world through Kazakhstan. Actually, we're thinking about, and we are start to finance the biggest highway building of highway. It's a route from Hamburg actually till the west of China through territory of Kazakhstan. It's a $3 billion project which financed by World Bank and other multinational organization. And we've also started to build 2 railways from the border with China till Almaty, the former capital of Kazakhstan, and from Aktau, which is a port facility in Caspian Sea, till the border with Turkmenistan. So the whole idea is connected the west of China through Kazakhstan with the Middle East. And I think this is also one of the opportunities for the future economic cooperation, China, Central Asia and Middle East, and through the, let's say, for example, Iran and Turkey to the European markets as well.
But let's talk about some of the challenges as well. So, Richard, you have tremendous business experience all around the world. Could I ask you to comment perhaps on some of those challenges?
From our side in the government, we've got to find a way of short-circuiting what is, and I think Karen would agree with me, a pretty daunting bureaucracy that faces these companies when they come in and want to do business. And right now, I think we've got a real big problem when it comes down to the implementation of governance in getting people to understand that this is not something that you sort of do once every half year or the year end for accounting purposes. It's done every day, and if people actually want to do their jobs better, they've got to be able to demonstrate that they are actually adopting these management techniques, and it's in their interest to do so. And increasingly, and it's back to the point somebody raised here about the process of due diligence, when investors want to come into us, I think they need to be much more aggressive in terms of forcing out answers on these issues, because perversely it helps guys like Karat and myself in order to get the internal system to recognise the importance of it and to have to change and give some weight and support to making these systems that are absolutely essential get embodied by the managers. And the managers have to learn that as well. It's not an easy lesson.
Olivier, I want to leave you with the last word on the panel here. This is an economy that has said it wants to diversify away from oil and gas, and yet it still represents, 70%, I guess, of revenues for the country. If we have a double-dip recession globally that unfolds over the next 12 to 18 months, can Kazakhstan come through that and remain strong given its reliance on that single source of revenue?
I think this government has learned the lesson and is totally cautious about the fundamentals that it has to put in place. So it has the reserves, it has a public balance sheet to cope macroeconomically. What I think is the issue is, will they be able to continue to implement, I would say, investor-friendly and competitive open economy? That's the only way it's going to diversify, and it's up to them. But if they don't do it now, I don't know who will do it.
The case for Kazakhstan. The minister offered assurances there are no restrictions on foreign ownership, while Darrell warned about the reality of investing in landlocked territory. Kairat went on to point out the potential for investing in infrastructure with Kazakhstan's ambitious transport strategy. Sir Richard commented on the challenges of negotiating a pretty daunting bureaucracy. And finally, Olivier reiterated the government's continuing need to implement investor-friendly and competitive policies to diversify away from hydrocarbons. Let's hear what our analysts think.
They obviously want to provide the incentives for investment, but they've also got the upper hand in the sense that they've now the legal arrangement through which all production sharing agreements or any one-to-one agreements are typically a one-to-one agreement rather than an open tender they have with Western oil companies, but other companies as well, is that ultimately because of the new laws they've introduced, if there's any contractual disagreement and it goes to outside international arbitration, that can ultimately be made null and void by the Kazakh government. So the Kazakh government maintains ultimate sovereignty despite the fact that you may be 100% owner.
There is simply a need for large amounts of investment, and Kazakhstan itself cannot do all the investments that potentially they could be doing, that are possible to explore all these assets and go into all these assets. Politically, they know that, I'm fairly sure, and like the Kazakhstan Business Forum in London is one of the ways to actually go out, talk to investors, promote Kazakhstan as the potential location for foreign investment.
All the safe areas for investing in oil and gas are gone, basically. And of necessity, investors will have to manage these risks as best they can. For the mainstream investor, for those that don't have a particular, their risk profile, if you like, doesn't necessarily involve them in oil and gas, they're going to be a lot more fickle. Kazakhstan isn't a great populous country with a big emerging middle class where the likes of Walmart or Tesco would want to get involved necessarily. Their risk profile is different in that sense. So the question of whether it presents itself as a real opportunity for you, being aware of the risks, really is dependent on your own risk profile and your own risk appetite, really.
They probably can achieve economic growth without even diversification, but I think for stability of the country, they would need investments in domestic in the sectors like retail, like consumers, to increase the living standards of the population.
Diversification, I think, for the macroeconomy is inevitable. Because it is required to support certain sectors, to actually further support the development in the oil and gas and metals and mining areas. At the same time, the money that is flowing into the country, people increase spending again. So retail, for example, is going to be attractive. We've recently seen more and more people, institutional investors, private equity investors, going back into considering retail investments in Kazakhstan.
What's stifling there again? It's the state structures. It's the emphasis on the national champion, and everything geared in and around the state. There's no genuine support of an independent, cultivating an independent private sector in that sense. And unless it does that, it won't seriously get the kind of development it wants. A broader-based industrial sector, a broader service-based sector, and that really will give greater depth and diversity to the economy. But that requires some serious political changes and implementing it on the ground.
We had quite angry investors who lost the money. But again, if they stick around, they probably would have recovered some. And that's I guess, the lessons that you learn in some of those emerging markets. If you're prepared to take the risk and stick no matter what, you will be rewarded.
And there we must end. Thanks to our panel for the insights that we were provided with today. This has been the CNBC FDI file on Kazakhstan. Thank you, everybody, for watching.